Story 1. I, 24F, have been working since I was 18 and have been diligently saving money. Over the years, I've built up a decent emergency fund and started putting money aside for a house. My parents have always known I'm good with money, but recently my mom, 48F, has been pressuring me to give her access to my savings account. She says it's because the family has had a lot of unexpected expenses lately, like car repairs and medical bills for my younger brother, 15M. While I understand money is tight, I've always helped when I could. I've paid for groceries, contributed to household bills, and even helped cover my brother's school supplies. But my mom insists it's not enough. She wants direct access to my savings account, just in case something big happens. I told her I wasn't comfortable with that since I've worked hard for this money, and it's meant for my future. I also mentioned that I'd be happy to help if a real emergency comes up, but I'd prefer to manage it on my terms. She got really upset, saying I don't trust her and that I'm being selfish. My dad has stayed out of it, but my older sister, 26F, thinks I'm overreacting and should just let mom have access. She even said, "What's the point of saving if you're not going to help your family?" Now, I'm feeling torn. On one hand, I want to help my family, but on the other, I don't think it's fair for me to hand over control of my hard-earned money. AITA for refusing to give my mother access to my savings account? 2. Last week, my sister asked if I could be in delivery room with her when she gives birth. I was surprised with the request and asked about her husband, and she said she and her husband are going through some issues. She also said her husband freaks out a lot, and she wasn't sure he could handle this. I then asked about our mom, and she said she didn't want to put any more burden on our mom. I asked my sister if she was sure about it, and my sister said I was always her first choice because growing up, she always felt safe and protected with me and knew nothing could go wrong. She said she would be completely stress-free if I was in the room with her. I know pregnancy can be daunting, and I told my sister sure, but I wanted to speak to my wife about it. My sister thanked me a lot. I then spoke to my wife about it, and my wife was shocked with my sister's request. She said it was completely inappropriate, and she's never once in her life heard of a brother being in the sister's delivery room. I told my wife there's nothing inappropriate about it, and my sister is just going through a hard time. Ultimately, all we want is a smooth pregnancy with no complications, and that can happen in a stress-free environment. My wife and I spoke about it some more, and I was getting exasperated. I finally told my wife she cannot forbid me from being there for my family. Story 3. I've been at my job for 10 years and have 30 PTO days a year plus holidays. My wife only has 17 PTO days plus holidays. I try to take some days off randomly to do me stuff, since I have extra days I can't spend with her. But every time I tell my wife I'm taking a day off, something magically happens to ruin my day. A sniffle that we would have normally sent our kid to school with all of a sudden becomes, "Well, you're home, you can stay with him," or a myriad of other things that just magically pop up. Help my mom with X. Do XYZ chore that happens to take 6 hours. Last week I took a day off and didn't tell her. I played video games for 4 hours, met a friend for lunch, and took a nap. She was all pissy when she found out. AITAH for not telling her I took a PTO day to veg?
Story 4. My ex and I have been divorced for 2 years. We have 2 children, ages are 4 and 15. Our daughter is the oldest and she loves her father to pieces. She took the divorce the hardest and does blame me for not working things out. We have all gone through family and individual therapy. It has been hit or mess intense. My daughter thinks parents should work through issues for the sake of the family. I have personal trauma with cheating. My father cheated on my mother countless times and she never left him because she did not want to be a single mom, yet she more or less was because my dad was always off with another person. I swore to myself I would not go down that path. My mom also wanted me to work things out with my ex for the sake of the kids. Holidays are rough for her, especially Christmas. Her father is not exactly reliable. And of course, I am the bad guy when he fails to do what he promises, because things would be so much easier if we lived together. I was at my wit's end yesterday because her father promised to take her ice skating but never showed, but for whatever reason it became my fault. Because as per my daughter, if dad lived here, he would not be so stressed and would have more time for all of us. At this point I told her she is free to live with her father if she wishes. I would not stop her, and she was old enough to choose.
Story 5. I, 21F, have a complicated relationship with my family, especially my mom. We moved to our new house when I was 14, almost 15, and it's only now being properly done up. What I mean by that is, 1. Our main bathroom is finally being renovated. Previously it was functional but no tiles, paint, etc. It had been completely stripped. 2. All the carpet in the house has been replaced. 3. The kitchen is having its final touches. Painted, shelves installed, hinges being replaced, etc. Siblings also all switched rooms, which came with full makeovers. And they're taking the cleanliness of the house seriously. My brother actually cleans the bathroom on the top floor despite it being his chore since we moved in. For context, when I was living at home, I insisted on walking outside of my room with slippers because there was always some weird liquid or goop on the carpet from my sister playing, or cat piss in the hallways because my mom refused to get our cats spayed and they didn't have their own food/water bowls until one moved out at 18. We had one litter box on the top floor, but the cats were having some behavioral issues and would fight when they saw each other, so one cat took over the top floor and the other would just do his business downstairs in the back hallway. The house was dirty, and despite my mom constantly cleaning, she never actually addressed any of the core issues. But now she is. The house looks, and smells, 10x better, and my mom has implemented a ton of stuff to help keep the house clean. However, I'm feeling a lot of resentment because my siblings get a properly furnished/decorated, clean home, whereas I got a broken down one that smelt of cat and dog piss. And I'm aware that my siblings also grew up in the same broken down home as me, but they now get to reap the benefits of this new home. I am also the eldest, and was responsible for a lot of the chores by default while they would openly refuse to help out. The horrible state of the house was why I never moved back home after uni. A few days ago, I arrived home for Christmas, and my mom was going through the rules for the house to keep it clean. I made a comment about if my brother actually does his chores now, and my mom says, yes, of course he does. He's been a great help, and he takes his cleanliness seriously. Something about this really pissed me off, because my brother would literally mock me until I was crying, because I would get upset that he would refuse to clean the bathroom or hoover. I think I shut off after that because my mom asked me what was wrong, and I said, I don't know. I guess I feel weird because the house actually feels like a home now. We talked a bit about it, and later I heard my mom crying in her room talking to her friend about what I said. Money was never an issue with renovations, BTW. The issue isn't even necessarily about the renovations. It's about the fact that we were living in filth and I had to pick up the slack when it came to cooking, cleaning, pet care, etc. The renovations just so happened to also cause my family to want to keep the house clean now because of the nice new carpet or new bathroom tiles, etc. I don't resent my siblings 20 and 18 for not doing their chores. They would deliberately go out of their way to create mess or refuse to do chores outright, and I would have to do them myself. I said this in a comment, but my brother would piss all over the bathroom we shared and would refuse to clean it. I went on a school trip for a week once, and when I got back, the bathroom floor was sticky with piss. When I asked him to clean it up, he said no. When I eventually did, because it also stank, he started recording me and mocking me. My sister knocked over her juice. It wouldn't be cleaned until I cleaned it. I could leave it for days and it would still be there, despite Mom being at home. The same with any other messes. When I was doing my A-levels, I would go in to school early to study before exams. I told my siblings that I would need their help with dishes or other basic chores. I asked my sister to wash the dishes. I found them in the sink, marinating in food. When I asked her about it, she said she didn't realize that food on plates had to be scraped off before put in the water. I have a million other examples of things like this. This isn't an issue of me being annoyed at teens for being arsy about chores. They were creating biohazards and genuinely making our home even more disgusting, and neither of them have acknowledged or apologized for this. Story 6. My ex cheated on me and fathered a child with another woman. That child is now 4F. He has full custody of her and is going for child support, but the mom isn't paying. I have primary custody of our 3 children, 11M, 9F, 9 meters, all signed. He gets our kids every other weekend. I have only seen this child 5 times, and I don't have a relationship of any kind with her. I never interacted with her, and while I know she's innocent of what my ex did, I prefer to keep us distant. My kids don't think of her as a sister. I never tried to change that. For me, them being close to her is not something I care about. If they are, then they are, and I'd have to deal. But if not, then I don't feel the need to encourage or promote it. My ex knows this. And he knows our kids don't care for his daughter. They don't have the best relationship with him either. He's not absent exactly, but he's been all over the place since the divorce. And he works a lot of long hours and lives almost 2 hours from us, which is partly why he's not a 50-50 dad. My ex lost his job in January of this year, He notified the courts, and his child support payment was reduced for our kids while he's not earning as much. The change in job and pay has meant he struggled far more, and the kids have noticed a difference in quality of life when they're with him. He also warned them months ago that they would get a small Christmas gift each from him because he cannot afford more. He leads on to his daughter. His parents died some years before our kids were born. His sister doesn't talk to him. His brother stopped talking to him after the affair, and the child's mother's family is not involved in her life either. So it's just him for her, and he can't afford to get her much. He mentioned this in our co-parenting app, and when we went to meet with our twins' teacher, he asked if I would get her something, or some things, so she can have some presents to open for Christmas. I told him no. He didn't ask me again until yesterday. He had the kids at the weekend and dropped them off at my house afterward. He saw the gifts under the tree, and he was angry at me. He asked if I got his daughter anything, and I said no. He asked me what our kids got, and I wouldn't tell him. I reminded him it was none of his business what I buy. Then he took out this dollar store doll, and he told me that was all he could fucking afford for his daughter, and she's just 4 years old. He told me he knows he fucked up, but she didn't. And he told me I could have helped, just a little. Or could have helped the kids get close to her, and maybe they would have wanted to give her something. He said instead I was just a cruel and selfish bitch to an innocent child. And he said she only knows being abandoned by her mom and her mom's family, she's unwanted by her own siblings, and her siblings' mom can't even be compassionate enough to get her one more thing so she doesn't just get one tiny doll for Christmas. He also put it on me that if he got our kids nothing because he knew I'd get them something and spent that money on his daughter instead, that it would make them pull away from him more. He left angry, and I went back inside and carried on as normal. I know I'm not a saint for this, and I don't pretend to be, but AITA for not getting the child something for Christmas when I know my ex can't afford anything else? 7. I, 27F, got engaged earlier this year to my fiancé, 29M, and we're planning our wedding for next spring. I'm thrilled about this new chapter in my life, but my older sister, 34F, is making things really difficult. For some context, my sister has 3 kids, 10M, 7F, 3F, and they can be a handful. I love them, but she doesn't do much to discipline them. At my engagement party, they completely wrecked the gifts I received. One of them spilled juice all over a photo book my best friend had made for me. Another ripped open a wrapped gift out of curiosity. And the youngest knocked over a cake stand. My sister just laughed it off, saying, "Kids will be kids." I was furious, but I didn't want to cause a scene at the time. Afterward, I talked to her privately and asked her to be more mindful of her kids' behavior at future events. She got defensive and told me I was being uptight and that life with kids is messy. Now that we're planning the wedding, I've told her that we want a child-free ceremony to avoid any disruptions. She's furious, saying I'm excluding her family and making her feel unwelcome. She even accused me of being jealous because I don't have kids yet. My parents are siding with her, saying I should be more understanding and that family comes first. But honestly, I just want to enjoy my wedding without worrying about another disaster caused by her kids. 8. My fiancé and I enjoy going to live classical music concerts as a special date night. Yesterday, I spent $110 on 2 front-row seats for holiday music we were excited for. Not even 15 seconds after the music started, the woman directly behind me began loudly humming with the music. At first, I tried to ignore it, hoping she'd stop, but she just kept going. It wasn't subtle. It was loud. You could see her being overly touchy with her husband as well, and she was clearly drunk. The husband at one point said something around the lines of her needing to stop as it's not polite, but the wife laughed it off. But I was becoming incredibly mad at this point. I'm not a confrontational guy. I hate confrontation. But I was just brewing the entire time. But my fiancé seemed to not have directly noticed, so I didn't want to cause a scene or ruin her night. But 30 minutes into the concert, I told my fiancé I needed to say something. I can't hear the music, and I was frustrated. That's when my fiancé noticed and told me it's okay and not to make a scene. Maybe 5 minutes later, the woman behind me begins singing. Straight singing! If you're not familiar with classical music etiquette, you don't sing, you don't hum, you don't make sound, you don't tap your feet. This is when I turned around, directly looked at the woman, and said, "Ma'am, please stop." The woman looked confused, asked me to repeat, and I said, "Ma'am, please stop. I've been listening to you the entire concert." She then hand-waved me away out of embarrassment. The husband didn't even want to look at me. He looked embarrassed. I could hear others laughing after I said that to her. You could hear the whispers of others giggling and repeating what I said to their significant other. But guess what? She didn't stop. She tapped me on the shoulders 5 minutes later to apologize, and I waved her away. I didn't want to accept any apology. I was frustrated, and I didn't want to acknowledge her. If it wasn't for my fiance being able to enjoy most of the show, I would have asked for a refund, or for someone to ask her to leave. But I do feel bad, because my fiance, now more attuned to the sound, she became frustrated with the humming. The woman was directly next to my ear, but my fiance, though next to me, was just a bit further and at an angle that made it as to why she didn't notice at first. But she then said something to the woman asking her to be quiet. And again, no change. When the concert ended at the hour mark, I didn't want to look at that woman. I didn't want to do anything but leave. I paid $110 to listen to a woman hum in my ear for an hour. It was a lesson in patience, but not in a good way. So, Reddit. AITA for telling her to stop? Should I have escalated it to staff or handled it differently? I genuinely am not a confrontational guy. I've never been in this position before. It makes me incredibly uncomfortable, so for me to have said anything is very out of character.
Story 9. Me, F25, and my husband, M26, got married this summer. We live in an apartment that I own. I have a full-time job and I'm earning more than him. He works from home and earns also well, but I'm slightly above him with my salary. We are sharing equally our finances like a husband and wife should. Well, I am also a collector. I spend plenty of time going to flea markets at 5 a.m. 4 times a week. I collect, I restore, and I also sell. eBay is my side hustle. Not only I enjoy collecting, but I am also earning some side money from there. I restore most of the junk and try to make a profit to grow my collection. My husband knew all of this because we dated for 7 years prior. I was very upfront and I told him that the money I make from my collection and from my flea market are the money I'm going to invest into my collection, and I won't be putting that into our household bills. It was fine. Till we got married. Then he started getting mad and angry whenever I buy something from my collection. He's constantly checking whether I sold something on eBay and ask what's my statement on my eBay's account. I have a separate debit card that I use for and from my eBay sales only, and I'm not taking any money out from our monthly salaries. December was my busiest month so far with all the holidays, and thankfully I was able to afford a piece from my collection that cost around $1,300, so I went for it. The thing is, he still doesn't know about it, because I fear that he'd get mad. I know it's my money, and I know I have a right to spend on whatever I want, but I still feel threatened and judged because of his upcoming reaction. Last month, I was eyeing another piece I was missing to add to my collection, and my mom offered to get it for me for Christmas, so she paid for the item, and my husband was very angry finding that out because he thought I could forward those money on getting us something else instead, like a new coffee table or some kitchen utensils. We have no debts. It's my apartment under my name that I got. He put his fair share into it by helping out renovating and everything. I can't complain, but it was 90% me. I put my whole salary into the bills and the groceries and whatever furniture we need, so I feel it's not fair him controlling my side hustle. Recently, whenever he hears the eBay notification that I have sold something, is getting mad that I am making money and is constantly putting up jokes saying, "There it comes, money from doing nothing," which is pretty annoying because I put tons of effort into my collection. I have started to turn off the notifications so he won't get jealous or cocky. Once in an argument, he said that me earning more and doing eBay side hustle is going to make him seem weak, and it's going to make me more dominant. And the thing that hurt me the most was one night him jokingly saying, "Well, I hope you don't sell anything so you wouldn't be spending those money on stupid things again."
Story 10. My sister is pregnant with her first child and is very excited about it. I'm happy for her because she really wants to be a mom. I have never particularly liked kids. I always said I never wanted kids of my own, even when I was young. Things changed somewhat, and I have a stepson that I adore, but other than him, I still do not like kids. For some reason, people around me interpret my relationship with my stepson as me having softened my dislike of children, when I am very clear this is not the case. I am also very introverted and do not do much as far as being around people that is more than the bare minimum to keep those around me happy. I am much happier home, either alone or with my girlfriend and stepson, just hanging out, than with the rest of my family or with friends. My sister today was excited about her pregnancy, and I was indulging her to be nice. She started going off on all the fun things I can do as an uncle with her yet-to-be-born child, and at first I just let it go. I didn't play along or say no, I just let her talk. She wouldn't stop, and eventually it just got to be too much, and I told her she needed to cool it. She asked what I meant, and I said her, and I have a different view of my role as an uncle. She asked what I meant, and I said I would see her kid on birthdays, holidays, and family events, but I didn't see myself doing all the things she was naming off. She got very upset and said, how could I say that about my soon-to-be first niece/nephew? I reminded her I am not the biggest fan of children and didn't see myself having a particularly close relationship with her child. She mentioned what a good dad I am to my stepson, and I said that's different, that's my son, I'm not her kid's father. And I don't have to be involved with her kid if I don't want to be. We also have another brother, and we both know he will be wanting to do as much with her kid as possible. So I said, it's not like the kid needs me. My parents then got the hint her and I were in a disagreement and came over to see what was going on. Both my parents are on her side and think I should be a better uncle and also should not have said something to upset my pregnant sister. So I have to ask, AITA?
Story 11. I, 18F, am the youngest out of 3 siblings. My oldest brother, 22M, has autism. He doesn't understand like everyone else does and is extremely smart in certain categories. Feelings are not one of them. He doesn't understand when he does something wrong, and when he doesn't get his way, things get out of hand. My father has been on my side for most of this. My brother, who we'll call Leo, always got his way. He has 1 cell iPhone, 3 iPads, a computer, a laptop, a PlayStation, Xbox, Wii, etc. I, on the other hand, have 1 iPhone, and that's it. When he gets angry, he smashes and breaks his stuff. We have had to replace electronics more than I can count. I tell my mom not to give in, but she tells me off. She always has the same excuse. Your brother is autistic, he doesn't understand. Or, when you grow up, you can get a job and start a family, he can't. And yes, the family thing is true, but she shouldn't give in all the time. I tell her he's not going to learn or that he doesn't deserve it. I asked her for a monitor for my birthday, and instead I got books. She made up the excuse that we didn't have the money, but the same day she gets him a new iPad, which was over $1,500. I realized that that's the reason she said no, was so she could get him that on my birthday. Recently, my family has yelled at me for being inconsiderate and selfish for expressing how I feel. I don't know if I should stop trying to speak out and try to stop them from giving in to his behavior. So, am I the asshole for wanting to be treated fairly?
Story 12. My friend Miley, 23, and I, 23, have a complicated relationship, mainly in the fact that I hate her boyfriend Link, 24. Link is, long story short, an ass who doesn't care about anyone but himself. He treats everyone horribly, is cruel and mean, and was disliked by the majority of people at our old college. Link and I had a massive falling out, and I'd cut Link out of my life. Our group of friends also heavily dislikes Link, and as a result, Miley doesn't bring him up at all. Link has shown up to events and occasional parties, and the two of us have mostly either remained civil to one another or engaged in small talk, which only reaffirmed my opinion on Link. Other than during the fight 5 to 6 years ago, I've never expressed any anger or dislike of him to Miley, as I believe our friendship is fragile, and she gets overly anxious and defensive of him. Her boyfriend is a sore subject in our friend group, and while we had voiced our doubts about him at the start of their relationship, because of how long they've been together, and wanting to not isolate Miley, we have simply just let them be. However, the sense of closeness we have with the rest of the boyfriends in comparison to Link is obvious. I don't think Link is abusive or purposefully isolating Miley from us. He simply does not care about the feelings of people that aren't him or Miley, and because Miley is happy with him, she refuses to see Link's personality, saying he is different around her. I got married to my fiancé, now husband, 2 days ago, and I'm writing this while my husband packs for our honeymoon. The reception was a barbecue with 30 people. When inviting guests, I invited my friends BFS/fiancés, as throughout the years we have become good friends. Obviously, Link wasn't invited. I debated on it. However, in the end, it is my wedding, and I didn't want him there. But at the wedding, Miley felt extremely left out. She was by herself while the rest of our main group of friends were with their partners. She got really drunk at the barbecue and came up to me crying about how horrible it felt having her boyfriend missing when everyone else's partner was there. I told her that I didn't mean to make her upset and that I only wanted to invite my closest friends. I thought maybe she was upset about the wedding, but then she asked me why I couldn't just put up with Link and understand that he made her happy. I told her I'd put up with him and be civil and kind him to the best of my ability and have never talked trash about him. She said she wished Link could be invited to places and liked, and how alone we made her feel because of our unspoken dislike of him. I tried to apologize, and I really did feel horrible. At this point, I'm wondering if I made the wrong choice. Should I have just invited Link? I feel like she's let out years of pent-up feelings out, and now I feel like an ass. Story 13. I, 27F, am yet another year responsible for all the planning and gifting during Christmas. My fiance's family thinks that we treat visits to my family as more important, which is not true. We visit them much more often, that's true, but that's because they invite us to events in big advance. That's something that my fiance's family never does. They just assume we will show up on our own. We've explained many times that we won't, because we already don't have much of free time, so if they want to see us, they just have to invite us, and we can plan it then. My fiancé, 26M, did not put any effort info planning visits or any gifts on Christmas since we met 3 years ago, so last year I made it extremely clear. Next year I will make plans on my own for us. If you want to take part in it, you can. But if you won't, then I'll assume you're okay with anything I planned. He was okay with it. This year I did not get any invitation from his family nor him, not a single word about organizing anything. I knew I could ignore them completely, based on our last year arrangement. But I knew it wouldn't be fair. I called and invited us to their Christmas Eve, which they assumed we will show up for anyway. But the rest, the days. I planned all with my family and relatives. Today, 23.12, he informed me that we are invited to his family living 2 hours drive away on 25.12. I said no. We have plans. He got really mad and said that it's not fair that my family gets 3 visits and his family only 1. I reminded him about our talk last year, but he said I should confirm my plans with him anyway. Told him that he could have asked, and I'm not going anywhere. He can go himself, but it will not sit well with me and there will be consequences for our relationship. To clarify, it's not about families. It's about my fiancé. He was supposed to make an effort to at least call his family or start any conversation so I could have details and could plan visits evenly. He did not, and then got mad when I made plans based on what I know. I am the for not starting the conversation. I was disappointed with how it went last year. That's why I've taken his declaration he'll be fine with what I decide if he does not show interest. I wanted to make a point. If you aren't invested, consequences are on you. We are spending the most important day, Christmas Eve, with his family. It was all my decision. The rest of the days are planned with my family. It's only a couple of hours a day. It's not like every second is planned. I just won't go on 4-H ride both ways to see his cousins now that plans are already made. It's not that my family sends formal invitations. They call and say, hey, wanted to know what are the plans. We are meeting there and there. What do you think? His family doesn't contact us at all. It's more like his sister calls if she can come with us. And we are like, but where?
Story 14. My boyfriend and I have been dating for about 5 years now, and we're expecting our first baby in 6 weeks. We've always been a fun couple that traveled and partied together, best friends. Since meeting, we've rarely gone more than a day without speaking. 4 weeks ago, my boyfriend complained that he felt spiritually oppressed by demons and could even physically feel them. He watched several YouTube videos on deliverance and claimed that he was embodied by the Holy Spirit and started to vomit and have emotional outbursts. This was followed by throwing away things in his home that he deemed to also be demonic, including clothing, furniture, and even a very expensive television that I purchased for his birthday. After this, he completely ghosted me and mostly everyone with the exception of his sister for more than 4 days, which included Thanksgiving. He claimed that only she could understand him, as she's had a similar experience and knew how to help him. During this time, he missed some milestone events and parenting classes for our first child. When I tried to appeal to his sister about his sudden absence, she called me irrational and emotional. At her advice, he joined a charismatic non-denominational church and has become a shell of the person I once loved. He no longer allows secular music/television, has sworn off drinking/smoking, and most conversations lead to him creating a sermon about the evils/demons of the world. This usually leads to us sitting in the bed, not talking at all, because he uses any time we can have together to read the Bible. He doesn't express emotions either, believing that anger or any other negative emotion is the work of demons and requires prayer if he feels it. Around 2 weeks ago, in a moment of frustration and sadness, I expressed that I missed the person he once was and felt that our relationship was suffering. I confessed that I needed him, as the last trimester has been difficult both emotionally and physically. Despite all of these things, he ghosted once again and has continued to have no communication with me, but spends every day with his sister and many hours at the new church. He's missed more milestone appointments at this point, and I've lost any confidence that we will ever have a normal relationship again. At some point in the middle of the 2 weeks that he's been away, his sister gifted me a Bible, which felt condescending, and a note that encouraged me to find the truth. And he left me a letter expressing that he loves and misses me, but avoiding me for the last 2 weeks are a part of God's plans. He refuses to acknowledge that regardless of his beliefs, his actions have been hurtful, make me feel abandoned and stressed. He feels justified in continuously going no contact at random intervals and only speaking to his sister. At this point, I don't trust him anymore. Feel manipulated. I'm Christian and growing in my relationship with God, but I don't agree with/support this doctrine. AITA?
Story 15. Last night, after our Christmas gift exchange, my partner suggested we go to a popular restaurant near my house. They had previously mentioned that their ex worked there, but I trusted their judgment and didn't think much of it. Once we entered the restaurant, I noticed a shift in my partner's energy. Before arriving, we'd been affectionate and joking around, but as soon as we walked in, they became quieter and avoided making eye contact with me. They waved and said hi to their ex, who then ended up being our server. During the interactions with their ex, my partner didn't introduce me, and I felt boxed out as their ex stood close to me, facing only my partner and giving compliments and kindness. This made me feel invisible and uncomfortable. After we already ordered, my partner asked if I was okay and if there was anything they could do. I said I was uncomfortable but didn't push to leave because I thought it might make things more awkward. I waited for just a simple introduction, but it didn't happen. Later in the meal, their ex asked if we wanted separate checks, which reinforced my feeling that the situation didn't look like a date. After dinner, I explained how I felt, and my partner got upset. They said I should have been open earlier and not expected them to read my mind. I told them that their shift in energy and lack of an introduction made me feel sidelined. They explained they were caught off guard by seeing their ex and don't think about them ever. So they were not expecting this and didn't want to make the situation uncomfortable for their ex by introducing me because my partner broke up with them. However, this made me feel hidden, and as though my feelings were less important than their ex's comfort. My partner felt I was ignoring their discomfort and did not offer them the benefit of the doubt. I felt like my hurt was being sidelined in the conversation, and that it was unfair for me to be the one to express discomfort, and I shouldn't have been brought into that situation. We ended the conversation with them saying they needed time to process. AITA for not expressing my needs earlier and letting the situation linger until after dinner? Story 16. A couple of weeks ago, I traveled to another country to see an artist I've been a fan of for 6 years. This was a once-in-a-lifetime experience for me, and I'd been waiting months for it. I sacrificed a lot financially and mentally to make it happen. Since it was my first, and probably only, time seeing them, I went all out. I bought GA tickets and arrived at the queue at 5 a.m., even though the doors wouldn't open until 6:30 to 7 p.m., in freezing cold weather. I waited all day, hungry, cold, and dehydrated. But it was worth it because when the doors opened, I secured a front row barricade spot, right up against the stage. This was my dream spot. Then, a guy behind me tapped me on the shoulder and told me he was disabled. He said the venue was supposed to let disabled attendees in early, but they hadn't. He asked me to give him my spot at the barricade. Here's the thing. I know this venue is very accommodating for disabled attendees. I actually have friends with disabilities who've gone to shows here, and the staff always ensures they get to the front row safely during a designated time frame before it gets too crowded. Now, I'm a very short person, 155 centimeters, 5 feet 1 inch, and this guy was extremely tall, easily over 5.5, If I gave him my spot, I wouldn't be able to see anything at all because he would completely block my view. I honestly would have been willing to move if he wasn't so tall, or if I could still see from the second row. However, in this case, I knew I'd lose the view I had waited more than 10 hours for. I tried to compromise. I pointed out that the right side of the barricade was still open and suggested he go there. Since he's so tall, he'd still have a great view and could hold onto the rail for support. However, he refused, saying the view wasn't as good as where I was. While we were talking, that section filled up, and he became more insistent. He said he'd have a hard time if he couldn't take my spot. At this point, I got frustrated and explained. If his disability was that serious, he should be in the accessible section, which is specifically designed for attendees with disabilities. If he insisted on being in the standing section, he should have brought a support aid, like a cane. I'd seen someone nearby with one. If he spoke to security, they could escort him to the front row disabled seating, which has a fantastic view and is much more accommodating. After hearing this, he called me an asshole, told me to get fucked, and left. I feel like he just wanted my spot and wasn't being truthful. The venue offers several options for disabled attendees, and I tried to direct him to alternatives. I feel bad for saying no, but I don't think it was fair for him to ask me to sacrifice my entire experience. So, AITA? Story 17. My FH and I are less than 6 months away from our wedding. I have been doing the majority of our wedding planning because my parents are funding the entire wedding. It makes sense that I should be the primary communicator, given that my parents are the ones financing the wedding. But it has taken a lot out of me to be project managing and coordinating myself, my FH, my parents, and future in-laws. My parents are type A and plan things in advance. I lean more this way too, and my FH's family are very last minute. This has never been an issue until it became my job to coordinate everyone. For context, the wedding will take place in the city in which my FH and I live. My parents live approximately 6-hour drive away, and future in-laws live 2 hours away. One appointment we needed was our tasting with the caterer. This was much more complicated than I expected. We needed to make sure my FH and I, my parents, my wedding planner, and the caterer were all available on the same day for this appointment. I wasn't sure if we could invite extra people or not, so my plan was to invite the in-laws after we scheduled if we could indeed invite 2 extra people to the tasting. It turned out we could, so after the meeting where I confirmed my FH, parents, and I were all available, I texted my in-laws to invite them. We got the last Saturday date available, so there weren't any other options for the tasting unless my parents took time off of work. Texted back that, turns out, there's a family birthday party that might be on that same Saturday. I told them that's too bad and we would miss them at the tasting. They responded and said no, you and FH are expected to be there for this party too, even though there are no concrete plans yet. I explained to them that we already scheduled this tasting along with a tour of our venue that day. That would be nearly impossible to reschedule. I was incredibly frustrated that they assumed that we'd clear our schedules to attend something they invited us to last minute, even if it was possible to reschedule this appointment. I told my FH I am unwilling to incur the wrath of my mother by telling her we need to reschedule. My mother would find a way to make this situation my fault, and having to be the one to communicate bad news to her is not something I'm willing to do. In order to protect my mental health, my FH is now saying I'm preventing him from attending this relative's birthday, someone who is important to him, even though he agreed to this tasting date and the birthday party hasn't even been locked down yet. TLDR. Am I the AH for telling my FH he either has to miss or go late to his relative's birthday because he committed to our wedding tasting? I suppose I could be because of my unwillingness to deal with my mother to reschedule. Although, in this situation, I don't think it's reasonable or worth it to jump the gun and tell my parents to reschedule when this hypothetical birthday party isn't even set in stone yet. Story 18. I, 31 meters, have been married to my wife, 28F, for 10 years. We have 4 great kids together, and while we do have our squabbles here and there, we have a solid relationship. So a couple weeks ago, my stepsister and her new husband come to our town and ask us to go out with them. My wife and I get a sitter for the kids, and we meet them at a bar. Both my wife and I drank 2 beers over the course of the 4 hours we were there. But my stepsister, and especially her husband, got wasted. At around beer 10 for my brother-in-law, somehow talk of our weddings/engagements came up. I was mostly talking to my brother-in-law, so I'm 99% sure this came from my wife and my stepsister. Which was fine. Whatever. I honestly didn't think anything of it. Until my brother-in-law told my stepsister to show us her ring. We've seen it before this, by the way. We were both in the wedding. I'm also going to slide in here that my brother-in-law's parents are rich. I don't know about his finances, but I do know they have money. And he works for their business. Moving on. Then he asks my wife what hers looks like because he's never seen it. True, they hadn't met when I married my wife, and my wife says, I'm not wearing it. Was this a surprise to me? No. I can't tell you the last time I saw her wear her rings. She's a housewife. And I'm not knocking that at all, but she just doesn't wear them 24/7 at home. And as a result of that, she doesn't stop and think, hey, I'm going to Walmart, let me go grab my rings. My brother-in-law makes a big deal of it, basically saying she would wear them if she cared about our marriage at all, pointing out that I was wearing mine, and I was, but to be fair, it came in like a 6-pack on Amazon. They're the rubber ones. If I lose one of them, and I have more. Now, I don't care about people having opinions, but what I do care about is when they're trying to drive those opinions home to the point my wife feels bad about herself when she's done nothing wrong, and that's what started happening. After both our wives go to the bathroom later, and he went in a little more to me with things I won't say here, it ended with me telling him that I could trust my wife with or without a ring if he couldn't trust his even with one. Maybe he should worry more about that and not whether my wife wears the rings I paid for. Me paying for them was a really big thing for him, for some reason. Since then, I guess he's been shitty to my stepsister about her wanting to come for Christmas with our family and blamed it on me, and when I talked to my dad, he told me that they weren't coming because of what I said. Now, other family members aren't coming because they aren't, and I guess it's a thing and it just feels stupid. Was I wrong? Story 19. Over the summer, my daughter Annie, 14, asked for piano lessons. My wife and I were surprised since Annie had never shown any interest in music, but Annie assured us that she was serious. Since she's a straight-A student, we didn't doubt her. It's also important to note that my wife and I have a rule that our kids can participate in any reasonable extracurricular activity, but they have to stick with it for a year season before they can quit. No questions asked if they do quit after the year season, though. Just to make it crystal clear, we've never forced Annie and her older siblings into particular extracurriculars. We've always given them the freedom to choose which extracurriculars to participate in. Annie started lessons right as the school year started. She practices for at least an hour every day, and her teacher has spoken positively to us about her dedication and rapid progress. Earlier this month, my wife and I went to the end-of-semester recital that Annie's teacher requires his students to perform in. We thought that she played beautifully, but during the car ride home, Annie told us that she wanted to quit piano. I asked why, and she said that she was embarrassed because A, she played the same piece as a 6-year-old, and B, Emily played a well-known Chopin piece. Emily is Annie's former best friend. Since both girls are very competitive and were always at the top of the class, they went from friends to frenemies. AITA, they still hang out in larger group settings but not one-on-one. I reminded Annie of the no quitting before a year rule and suggested switching piano teachers if she wanted to avoid playing during the same recital as Emily. But Annie said that it didn't matter if she switched teachers because Emily already knew how bad she was at piano. Thankfully, my wife is 100% on my side here, but several family members who are with us for Christmas have said that I should let Annie quit piano. Story 20. Hi y'all, a bit of context. I'm 39, self-employed, and my immediate family is my mother and 2 siblings. When my father died around 6 years ago, he left my mother 3 small apartments. My mother had been growing increasingly weary over the past few years, dealing with all the administration of owning and/or renting out the apartments, so we recently decided we'd sell one of them to also give my mother a bit of cash to move to a new country with. The apartment in question is in Switzerland. Selling property is complex and bureaucratic in this country, and real estate agents charge a hefty commission for their services. For this property, the fee would have been around $30,000. To save this money, I volunteered to manage the sale myself. I didn't quite know at the time what I was getting into, because it did indeed end up being quite a lot of work. I had to rearrange a few of my mother's legal and financial affairs before even getting started, and then it was a total of 3 months' work constantly monitoring and being in touch with various entities, buyers, bureaucrats, tax advisors, etc., to get it done. But it got done. Earlier this month, we signed the contracts, and the money finally arrived in my mom's bank account yesterday. Along the way during this process, my mother told us that she wants to give each of the kids a cut of the sale, around 10% each, which we were obviously happy about. I mentioned to my mom that while I don't really care about the gross amount, I think it'd be fair that the amount should be higher relative to what my siblings get, Given that I spent countless hours on this while they just waited for it to go through without any of the stress, I proposed to get half of a typical real estate commission, $15,000, more than my siblings, which she agreed to. Which brings me to the dilemma now on my hands. We're all now back at home for Christmas. And last night, the topic of the money came up. My siblings came in with a little counter-proposal, saying that they thought that $15,000 was excessive and that $5,000 would be fairer. I was a little bit incensed by this, given that they had no visibility into the actual amount of work put in. They also came at me with the rather strange argument that since I didn't have the same qualifications as a realtor, I shouldn't expect anywhere near the amount that a realtor would. Finally, they said that I should be grateful, i.e. we should all be grateful, that we are getting 10% of it at all and not be greedy. Honestly, I'm a bit dismayed by all this. I feel grossly underappreciated by the family and made to feel like I'm being greedy and ungrateful for asking for a little financial compensation for work that has a significantly higher market value and came at significant cost to me, time and opportunity cost. But the family claims that these sorts of calculations shouldn't come into play in family affairs. Am I the asshole for insisting otherwise and being upset at this state of affairs? Story 21. For a majority of my life, my house was being foreclosed and later evicted on. My father was very sick during all this, which made life a lot more difficult. My dad died. Few years into my brother's relationship, I was supposed to move out to my own apartment. But due to his passing and my childhood home being evicted, my brother and I agreed to buy the home together and put a roof over our widowed mother's head. We never had an agreement about his girlfriend living with us. Then, my dad's service came around. No conversation, nothing. Her stuff was all moved into the home I just bought right after my father died. Mind you, I wasn't thinking about her because I was grieving my dead father. A little background. My family was broke after the 2008 crash. My dad was part of the Lehman layoffs and then got sick after drinking contaminated water on a trip. My brother's GF's family is worth millions, and they flaunt it. She has lived here for 3+ years and hasn't paid a single dollar. Started her first job a few months ago and still no plan to pay. Amidst all this, she is a different religion. Started putting up all her religious symbols in the windows, in my living room, and overall became super controlling over everything. Even hit my dog with a broomstick because she was barking. This girl is entitled, privileged, and had everything handed to her. Parents never helped out, nor said thank you for taking in their daughter for free without consent. My brother is more guilty for enabling this. Then he proposed, before she ever paid a bill, before she ever cleaned up, before she ever did anything. What bothers me most is she slithered in when my dad died. I needed that time to grieve, with my family, with people who were going to help, whether it be emotionally, financially, etc. She's rude to my mother, and they have virtually no relationship. She has zero redeeming qualities that would make me understand. He's also gone most of the day, works and leaves the house to work out all night, so I'm stuck in my home with her that I saved. None of my friends or GF get along with her because she is so blah. Doesn't have many friends. Doesn't have a good relationship with her family. I sound like I'm on a smear campaign, but it's truly astounding. And I don't know what to do. I've had honest conversations with him, and he thinks I just hate her and her family. He nor she has ever thanked me for putting my hard-earned money and love into my childhood home to help my mother live a stable life. I spoke to him a second time, and he blew up, wants to sell the house. 3 years and no rent paid from her. Their wedding is costing roughly $70,000. It's awkward. She won't speak to me, nor will he. I was never mean or rude. I always tried to build a relationship with her, include her in hangouts, made her part of my family, but I can't get over how this was all done. My father's death, losing my home, and saving it. No rent despite her family being worth millions. I poured so much money, my heart, my soul, my blood into all this. Now I'm going to be selling my house and losing my brother before they get married. I'm upset and more so confused. I try to communicate and it turns into a tantrum. Is there anything I can do? Is this normal? Am I the crazy one for speaking with my brother about my concerns? Just feel like I was taken advantage of during my most vulnerable time. Now I need to find a place to live because a conversation led to a fight and I was going to ask you to be my best man. Lol. I've come such a long way. I have a loving girlfriend, a great supporting cast of friends. I work at a major tech company, And overall, I'm just a happy guy who likes seeing others do well. My mother is doing great. I've been let down plenty, but this one stings. He's one of two blood relatives I have left. They had the master bedroom and main floor, and I had one bedroom upstairs with no heat, bathroom, or kitchen. Again, I had no idea she would be moving in. What a nightmare. Story 22. Is it okay for me to allow friends to come to Christmas? I am one of 4 siblings. My family loves Christmas Eve, and it is everyone's favorite holiday. My parents live in NY, and my siblings and I fly into California for the holiday. My parents host and buy all the food. 2 years ago, my fiancé and I invited his best friend over to spend Christmas Eve with our family, since they had nowhere to go. I asked my mom and my family, and they said yes. They came to Christmas and everything seemed fine. This year, the same people asked to come to Christmas Eve. I talked to my parents, and they were okay with it, so we said yes. My sister, 24F, is now super upset they are coming and is causing a huge argument. She is upset because she feels like we are commandeering the holiday. She is upset. No one asked for our input because she would have told us to say no. We asked if they offended her. She said no. She just feels like their personalities take up a lot of space. Which is true. She told my fiancé and I we should have called her to discuss them coming, and we have offended her for not asking. It has now caused a divide in my family. My fiancé is offended. My mom and dad are upset with my sister for causing an argument and not welcoming people for the holiday. My other sister is upset they are coming. My brother is on my side. My fiancé is super uncomfortable, and we now are not sure how to handle the situation. Am I the asshole for allowing them to come? Eat it. My siblings and I fly from California to NY. I invited my fiancé's best friend and his wife, so 2 people. Important context. My fiancé's best friend's sister passed away last year, and he does not celebrate with his family. They also asked us last minute, 2 days ago. They are driving up from NYC only from 12/23 to 12/25 because they want to see us and PTO. At Christmas, it is usually my family of 6, whoever has a partner, and 1 to 2 of my parents' friends. Each year, we have between 8 to 12 people. My siblings and I are home for 1 week together, and we all stay at my parents' house for the holidays. My siblings and I also see each other at least once a month and see our parents 5 to 6 times a year. Other important context. My sister and her partner broke up 2 to 3 days ago, and her partner decided the day before they left not to come to Christmas, which was after we said yes to our friends to come. My fiancé was uncomfortable not because of my sister's reasoning, but because my sister started yelling about the situation at the dinner table and then stormed out of the room. He felt disrespected because she yelled at him, not because of her points about bringing them. My fiancé's best friend and his wife are not complete strangers to my sister. She has stayed at their apartment with us in NYC and has asked to use their apartment when she visited NYC, and they weren't home. Story 23. I'm 18F and my boyfriend is 18M. We've been dating since the summer of 2020, before high school even started. We met on Snapchat, and despite how young we were, I really grew to love him. He was there for me during some of the darkest times in my life, especially when I struggled with depression. We've been together almost 5 years now, and we've both graduated. Now, my boyfriend barely comes around to meet my family. In fact, he's only met them 3 times, and every time we have a family gathering, he's never there. Last Saturday, we had our Christmas party, and of course, everyone asked where he was. I told them he was at his own family's party, but my uncle pulled me aside and said something that really got to me. He said that they've only seen my boyfriend twice in all the years we've been dating, and that it was starting to bother them. He told me that they were slowly starting to dislike him because it feels like he doesn't care enough to show up, which really hurt me because I love my boyfriend, and I want him to be a part of my life, especially with my family. I've brought this up to him before. I've told him that I don't expect him to be there for the whole party, but that at least dropping by for a little while would mean a lot to me. But when I suggested splitting the time between his family's party and mine, he said he couldn't leave his own family event because his mom wouldn't let him. I told him I understood, but it feels like he doesn't even try to find a solution. After the conversation with my uncle, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I texted my boyfriend and tried to explain how I felt. I told him that if he truly cared about me, he would make time for my family, even if it was just for a bit daily. I told him that my family would never pressure him into drinking or partying, and they're not intimidating once you get to know them. But he just kept saying that he's busy and that we're not married, so I shouldn't expect him to drop his events for mine. Honestly, It hurt. I've been putting in the effort for him. I told him that I never expected him to cancel his family plans for me, but that I wanted him to come by for a bit to see my family, as it was at least an effort. I told him I'd make time for his family, no matter how busy I was, but he never invites me to anything they do. He said he couldn't cancel on his family, and I understand that, but I don't think it's too much to ask for him to at least drop by for a bit. Instead, he kept telling me that I wasn't understanding his side of things. It just feels like I'm the only one trying. I get that his family comes first, but so does mine, and I want him to understand that. I tried to tell him that if he really loved me, he would make the effort, but all he said was that he stands by his morals. I don't know what to do anymore. I feel like I'm begging for the bare minimum. I'm just so upset and don't know if I'm in the wrong for feeling this way. So, AITAH for getting upset. Story 24. This year, my daughter wanted to participate in our country's version of Angel Tree. I agreed with the condition that she would need to donate the amount of gifts from her toy collection we would be buying for the child. It was true. The toys my child donated would not be going to the child whose list we picked, but to the local daycare who had asked the community for used toy donations to the tree or playroom. My daughter happily agreed to this condition and chose her 3 least favorite toys to donate. We purchased the toys and other asks on the child's list and wrapped them together. We made a time of it and played carols, as well as had Christmas snacks. I wanted this to be a positive experience for my daughter. Yesterday we had my family's Christmas celebration. My daughter was telling my mother, 52F, about her donating her toys and getting to buy toys for another child that needs them. My mother was outraged that I forced my daughter to donate toys and that I was being harmful to my child by instilling dislike for charity in my daughter. My sister piped up and agreed with my mother, saying I wasn't being fair by forcing my child to donate her own things to participate in charity. I tried to explain to them I was teaching my child that donation costs us personally, but feeling of doing good for others is the payoff. My child doesn't want for anything. She has had more than 3 toys given to her already for Christmas, toys she preferred over the toys she gave away. I have left the family gathering feeling very emotional and upset. My daughter is confused because she thought she was doing the right thing by donating her toys and is upset that I was crying on the way home. I'm pretty sure I did the right thing, but I was berated by my mother and sister for nearly an hour about my parenting choices. Edit. I have realized condition is probably the wrong word to use in the circumstances. My daughter asked to participate in the Angel Tree, and I suggested and encouraged her donate some of her own toys to the local daycare alongside our donation. She enthusiastically agreed and was completely in control of what toys she was donating. We were well overdue a toy decluttering, and we're going to be doing this after Christmas anyway. This way, she was able to be the one to decide which toys we decluttered and got the bonus of feeling like she was helping others. If she had refused, I wouldn't have pushed the donation, and we would have still donated to the charity she chose. Story 25. So this morning was freezing, like 12 degrees with a brutal wind chill. I was heading to work when I noticed a woman standing next to her car with its hood up in the grocery store parking lot. She was waving her arms at passing cars, clearly in distress. I'm not a car expert, but I know how to jump a battery, so I figured I'd stop and help her out. As a note, I'm a woman as well. I pulled over, rolled down my window, and asked if she needed a jump. She immediately came over to my car and started going off, saying, "Finally! What took you so long? Are you blind? I've been stuck here forever." I didn't let her attitude bother me and grabbed my jumper cables. As I was hooking them up, she barely acknowledged me and just stood there scrolling on her phone. I told her to try starting the car, but it didn't work right away. No. I explained that sometimes the battery needs a few minutes to charge, and she totally flipped out. She goes, "Are you even doing this right? What's the point of stopping if you're just wasting my time?" I tried to stay calm and suggested she be patient, but she then looked at my car, which is admittedly not that nice looking, and said, "Figures. You drive a piece of junk and you're trying to help me." I should have waited for someone who actually knows what they're doing, like a man. At that point, I was done. I unhooked the cables, packed everything up, and started walking back to my car. She shouted, "Where are you going? You can't just leave me here." I turned around and said, "Watch me," and got in my car to drive off. As I left, she threw her coffee cup at my car and cursed me out. So, AITA for walking away and leaving her stranded? I feel like I was just trying to help, but her attitude was completely uncalled for. Plus, it admittedly is unsafe for a woman to be stuck somewhere with car troubles. My friend said I should have helped her because of girl code, but I think she broke girl code first.